Welcome to another Conversations in the Void. I'm your host, Graveyard, joined as always with my on-screen producer, Salem. Make sure to say hi to Salem in the chat. He likes to hear from each and every one of you. Now, I am pleased to introduce our guest for tonight. I was able to meet her last Days of the Dead in November in Chicago here. So, writer for Blackgate, giving us all the Goth Chick news that we could ever want. Please welcome to the Void, Susan Granquist.
Hey,
How you doing tonight?
doing well, thank you. Excited to be here.
Yes. I'm excited. Like I said, I met a lot of great people, including yourself, at Days of Dead. That was a first time doing a con for us, and I want to do more.
It's a great little community. It's actually not that little, but sort of this great underground horror community that comes to shows like that. It's awesome.
Yeah, I remember growing up like, oh, you're that weird kid that likes those slasher movies.
Well, now you know where all the weird kids gather now that they are adults with expendable income. We all go to conventions like that. It's coming up again this weekend. So
yes, I'm excited.
Yep. Yeah, twice a year it comes to Chicago. One of the fun ones, definitely, Days of the Dead.
For sure. So let's kind of get to know you a little better, Sue. So what kind of like brought you into the world of horror? What was your gateway horror movie?
The Universal Studios black and white movies, the oldies, the originals. My dad used to watch them in front of the television with his nose about 3 inches from the screen and the sound turned down because he was watching, verboten stuff in our household because my mom was more on the religious side. So he'd watch these and I'd get up and I'd see that blue light coming out of the living room and I'd sneak in and he'd let me come sit by him and watch. Absolutely fell in love with Bela Lugosi and he's my favorite. All the original horror movies is where I got started. And yeah, I grew up being the weird kid. My older male cousins used to smuggle me horror comics.
Oh, really?
Past my mom, and so I would literally in bed under the covers with the flashlight reading the horror comics. So yeah, it started there and just expanded in college. The 80s, and the 90s were great eras for classic horror and in the new classic horror. So
yeah,
went from there.
That's awesome. You met me, you saw my horror tattoo sleeve I have of all the classic slashers. And what I want to do with my other arm, when my wife lets me spend the money on tattoos, is I want to do a Universal themed style arm. I want to have like a castle leading to a graveyard, then forest down the rest of my arm, and just take that classic scene that's in all the Universal monster movies that we have.
That let me have a word with your wife. I'm sure I can talk her into that. That's epic, especially with the new Universal Studio Park opening. Cannot wait. Already have my trip there set up. I may never leave the part that has about the monsters. I might probably as far as I'll get in the park, but still, very cool.
Yeah, it's amazing that I said I grew up on those as well, and classic 80s stuff is too. I remember being 4 years old, and my older cousins, who are like 10 to 15 years older than me, got Child's Play and brought it to like our family reunion. They watched it. My older sisters, who are like 4 and 8 years older, were terrified. 4-year-old me is watching Chucky.
Just like, people. How do I get one of those dolls? I know. I feel you. It's fabulous.
Yeah. So okay, so I'm gonna have your kind of your limits of good and bad horror here with these next questions, is because I want to know what is the most overrated horror IP or franchise that you can think of. Like you just go, I don't know why this is so popular.
I have people that will hate me for saying this, but I absolutely cannot understand the Terrifier movies. And I've met some of the people that worked on that film. And on one hand, you have to love the whole genesis of an independent film catching fire like that. It's what every indie film person hopes for. But after like that first movie, then where it went after that, I don't get it. I don't.
Yeah. I agree. I think All Hallows Eve and the first Terrifier were easily the superior Terrifier films. And I met some of those people too. And I'm afraid that number 4 is going to dive into a CGI fest of her going into hell to fight.
I'll be honest, I'm not a big hack and slash fan. I like the more cerebral scares, those atmospheric scares. I just feel like anybody can back up the blood truck.
Yep.
And anybody can shock value the crap out of something, and so I don't feel like there's just a lot of, creativity in doing that. But like I said, I'm going to get hate now on Black Hate,
No.
because people love it, and what Bloody Disgusting funded that third one because they couldn't get it funded by the big studios. The big studios wanted it at first, but they wanted them to cut some of the more controversial topics out of it, and good for them. They said, screw the studios, and they went full on indie, and by Hollywood standards, 3 times back your investment is a success. 4 times is practically a blockbuster, and I think when I looked up the return last time, they were like 7 times their return. I mean, the last that sequel to Top Gun Maverick only made 7 times its investment. Right. So so the last Terrifier movie is right up there with, as far as our return on investment. So people love it, and it's got a rabid fan base, but I don't get it.
Yeah, my wife refuses to watch it. I tell her, it is 80s gore effects, right? It's practical effects. It's disgusting. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to push her to watch it. I understand it, but I'm like, to me, just the first one especially reminds me of like a Friday the 13th.
Yeah, sure. I definitely saw the attraction of the first one, and then they lost me entirely after that. But
oh yeah. So then, Sue, on the flip side, what is the most underrated horror that you just go, whoa, you haven't seen this movie? I'm gonna sit you down and watch it.
Wow. Underrated horror. Unfortunately, my taste is not entirely off the mainstream as far as a lot of horror. I'm going to jump right into a recent one that is very polarizing, and that's the Eggers Nosferatu. It felt like people either loved it or hated it, and a lot of people just didn't see it, and they're like, oh yeah, it's a remake of that original one. And if you know the background story of the original one, and then speaking of special effects, he did all practical. I think I wrote, when I wrote about that, there was 2,200 live rats that they used in those scenes. And so I have mentioned that as being my current favorite. I literally had a love fest over that movie, and people can look at me like I have lobsters crawling on my ears. They're like, what? That wasn't that, I and didn't even see it, or watched a little bit when it started streaming and never finished it. So I can't really say it's underrated, because it did actually get a nomination for I think a couple of nominations for photography and for, I think, costume design. But it is very polarizing that people don't seem to want to love on it like I did. I absolutely loved that movie.
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
We did an entire episode of Nosferatu. We watched the original. We watched Shadow of the Vampire. We watched Robert Eggers, and what Salem and I thought was really interesting. We talked about this on the episode. Is when William Dafoe shows up, we go, okay, that's the Doctor. In the original, there's like 5 minutes left of the movie. But with William Dafoe, obviously it's William Dafoe. You have him for like another 40 minutes. So we thought it seemed long just because of that point. We thought like, oh, we were close to wrapping up, but we weren't. But yeah, it's a fantastic movie. And, my wife doesn't seem to necessarily appreciate it as much. She kind of got halfway through it. She's like, she hasn't finished it.
That's the thing, that people had a lot of, even the horror, the horror community was very polarized. It would seem like they had loved it or hated it, or just flat out didn't want to see it, which was a shame.
Yeah, it's arguably the best vampire movie we've gotten in a long time.
Truth, brother. My absolutely. I could take up the rest of your time here complaining about the crap that has come over in the vampire genre recently. But
yeah, people love Abigail.
I didn't hate on Abigail. I was actually more excited about it, and I kind of went in with the idea that it's going to disappoint me.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it was fun. I didn't, you can't expect it to be anything more than what it was, which is cheesy and
Right.
kind of fun. But I thought it was fun. Actually,
Yeah.
I kind of liked it.
That's fair. That's fair. Like I said, I didn't like Renfield.
Oh, that was a crushing disappointment. That had so much. I thought so much potential, especially with the stars in there. Is so much potential, and I walked out going, well, there's 2 hours of my life I'll never get back. But
yeah, I thought Nick Cage was fantastic as Nick Cage as a vampire.
But was he really playing a vampire? Or was he just playing Nick Cage?
Oh, he's playing Nick Cage.
Yeah, and yeah, and but he would, it had again, if you're a director and a writer and you've got him doing a part like that, I just felt like they could have exploited that to being an absolute like underground classic. It would have been his, and I just feel like he did himself, but he didn't have enough material to work with. And I just thought, they wasted Nick Cage being crazy. Nick Cage, they wasted it. But
very true, very true. So Sue, how did you get into writing for Blackgate? How did it all come to be?
It was I was a fan of the magazine. We used to be print, and it was I used to pick mine up at Barnes and Noble. It was printed 6 times a year, and it was almost like a big oversized trade paperback. And at the time, the owner, the editor in chief, was focusing on showcasing new writers.
Okay.
And there was a small section in kind of the back of the magazine where they talked about movies and books and so on. And I cold called. I at the time was reading, this will really date me, but the series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket, the children's books, which I thought were just brilliant. It was like if Edward Gorey wrote children's books. And I had read the first 3 books, and I sent in a cold review to Blackgate on those books. And I got it about a month later. I got an email back asking me, saying they're going to print it, and asking if I would do something for the next issue. And we were in print for another few years after that before we went digital, probably 5 years after that. And so all these years later, now I'm a senior contributing editor, and just published my 666th post, which one of my longtime collaborators in the horror comic industry laid claim to several years ago. Said, I want to be the interview for the 666th post. So yeah, it's been a journey, but it was just kind of a whim that I was actually working at Motorola at the time, and still my underground love of horror and stuff. But it was at the time keeping that very separate from my engineering day job. And, it actually, nobody at my day job still know. Well, I think they might know now. Because I keep those 2 worlds very, very separate. But yeah, so it was just a cold call. It was a happy happenstance that turned into this side hustle.
That's awesome, though. I mean, that's 666 articles is a lot. So how do you kind of pick out what you're going to talk about? Do you have the free reign to pick out whatever you want to talk about?
Yeah, we do. The editor, I call him the Big Cheese. We'll just leave it at that, because he's got a secret identity that he doesn't want let go, but let know. But the Big Cheese has some general guidelines. We are definitely what he calls a family-friendly environment. So there's some limits on what we can say in print and what I can cover in print. But for the most part, it's just down to me. And we have a webmaster, and I have a deadline Thursdays. My content goes up Thursday nights. I have a noon deadline on Thursday to turn in the article and the related pictures. So if I don't have a trade show like Days of the Dead coming up that I can cover, the readers are amazing. I get a lot of tips emailed in. I'm connected with other people in this space that, like yourself, that I read their stuff. I listen to their stuff. They call me. It's like, hey, did you hear about this? I've done a lot with Bloody Disgusting over the years. I laugh, but I used to work with Mr. Disgusting's mother.
Oh,
because she found out that I did this, and she's like, oh, you might know my son. Do you know the Mr. I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah. So he's thrown me some bones over the years. We've done a few things together, but it's just mainly all the feeds that I'm part of, and really super lucky to have met some amazing, Hollywood people, that either special effect people, writers, and so on, who slip me things.
That's
Sometimes
awesome.
pieces of scripts, sometimes little, most of the time I get these things, then like, and you can't talk about that. And I'm like, oh, well, how can you send me something and say you can't talk about that? Well, that's just a heads up. You can't talk about it now, but you'll be able to talk about it in a little bit. But yeah, I get it. I have a lot of really generous people surrounding me that throw me insider stuff.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. With this show that I do, we've done, this is like our 85th episode now of doing live interviews, and I get to work, talk to a lot of indie people too, because I'm in the indie community, and they're like, here's the screener for the movie, so we can talk about it. I'm like, okay, but I'm like, I don't want to spoil it. It's not out yet. I want to promote it. I don't have a kind of a verbal NDA with a lot of people, but I make sure to never spoil anything at all. I'm gracious that they send me these marketing materials just to be able to talk to them, because I really do support everyone that comes onto our show. If it's any comic creators, I end up with one of their comics, and stuff like that, and just try to support them any way I can, because I think it's very important that indie support indie. This is a community that realistically should have no hate. Everyone should be able to get along. Not always the case, unfortunately.
Especially when reality can be very upsetting, depending on what's going on. This is definitely my happy place, is the community of people. And after 666 articles, and that doesn't count the print, that's just the online stuff, there's a whole network of wonderful people. I said sometimes these conventions that we go to, like Days of the Dead, I said they're like mini family reunions, because you go like, hey, what are you up to? Hey, did that, how's the movie go? How's the film going? And the indie scene is definitely one of my favorite things to cover, because people are there for the passion. They're, a lot of times you hear stories about they mortgaged their house, or their parents, kicked in anything to kick in the money to help them make this thing that they're passionate about doing. It's wonderful. It's like, that's where you see the real artistic, amazing creativity come through, when it's not behind the gloss of a Hollywood release. That's why I love indie so much.
Oh yeah, for sure. I went to Acronomicon a couple months ago, and I went there in a snowstorm, Akron, Ohio. So Chicago, it's 6-hour drive, just to be at the table for 7 hours, let's say. Vastly different from Days of the Dead, but it's still an audience. I really enjoy talking to everyone there, and like I said, talked to a lot of indie creators, and just passing out, and just networking is huge. When I did Days of the Dead, I think I got booked out 3 months worth of bookings just from doing Days of the Dead, which is good. Like I said, we're pretty far booked out, which is a great place to be.
That's awesome. And it's a great way to get the word out too. With the network is fantastic as far as the people you meet at those shows. So
it's amazing. We're building that network. We're able to talk to people, and then they go, I'm really want to do this. I don't know anyone that does it. I'm like, well, I happen to know someone that does that, and just get them to talk to each other too.
And I know somebody that does special effects, or I know somebody that does makeup, and
Mm-hmm.
I just love how the community supports each other, and it's just a weird thing, when I tell people we just covered Trans World in
Mm-hmm.
St. Louis a few weeks back, and which is like the biggest biggest show for its industry only, and it's for the high end special effects for places like
Mm.
Cedar Point, or
Okay.
Universal Studios makes their own special effects, but like the big amusement parks that have
Yeah.
like Halloween Horror Nights and things like that, and so you go and you're like, oh my gosh, there's this underground community that, and I looked it up recently, not that long ago. It's a $30 billion
Whew.
industry, the Halloween industry, which in a good year is September to the first week in November, and it's $30 billion. So it's crazy what this when you see the magnitude of what's going on behind the scenes, it's inspiring, and it's a incredible amount of creativity going on, and this whole it's like the unseen world that people don't know
Mm-hmm.
exists until you go to one of these shows and you're like, whoa.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. And when I was at the last con, and I had people like, hey, I want you. You're awesome. Come to my con. Come to my con. And it was like already 6 hours from Akron, which is 6 hours from here. I'm like, oh, that's a heck of a drive. I'm like,
Yep.
I'm very, very gracious of being invited to these things. I can't go to all of them, unfortunately, but like I would love to.
Yeah.
We have plans to do more and more, especially as our next film comes out and we're prepping for it and be able to sell our DVDs, Blu-rays, merch, stuff like that. And it's amazing stuff that you're able to do that. And it's like I said, learn behind the scenes of everything that we do and talk to everyone that we can.
Yep.
So, Sue, let's talk about Wolfman and Universal
Oh,
Studios. I have to.
and it,
Like I said, we both love Universal,
yes.
Studios and other stuff, and Blumhouse. I think they did Invisible Man really well. So
Yes, they did.
I had really, really high hopes for Wolfman.
Yep.
Then it came out.
And and I'm the sucker that watches the trailers, because I did get an early look at that trailer, and I know good and well that the trailer is the best parts of the movie. I'm not stupid. I've seen it. And I get suckered into this crap every single time. So I watch that trailer and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be good. It's Blumhouse. I love Blumhouse. I mean, they're not 100% hit, but I'd say they're batting 8 out of 10,
Oh
maybe.
yeah, yeah.
So I had high hopes, and of course, this is coming off of what was the one with Kit Harington?
Beast Within.
Beast Within. Okay,
Yeah.
so like I got suckered into that one too, thinking, and that was indie, and I thought, oh, Kit Harington, So yeah, I was it broke my heart to a million pieces, because that I literally walked out of that movie thinking that is now 2 hours of my life, and thankfully I went to a matinee, so it wasn't a lot of money that I'll never get back. But what I mean, what a dog, in not in a good way. It was just, it was painfully awful.
Mm-hmm.
And Jason Blum should be ashamed of himself.
Well,
He really should.
Well, and I think the thing is, like, people gave Benicio del Toro's one in 2010 a lot of crap for it being so much like the original and being overblown and stuff like that with budget. And this one, Wolfman, was pretty a low budget one, but I think the 2010 one was far better than this one that we got.
Way better. And it's like, stop with I can't. I'll take up the rest of the time like picking it apart. But they spent way too much time with these little human interest scenes, and they never made you care about any of the characters. And then believe it or not, the ending that I saw, or the ending that was implied, the scenes that I saw never were in the film. So if they would have ended it the way it was implied that it was going to be ended, I might have given it a little more grace, but it just dropped off the, did you say I can swear on here? Can I swear on here?
Yeah. Oh,
it dropped off the fucking cliff. In that, I hated that ending so bad. I would, if I didn't have so much respect for the people that work in the theater, I'd have thrown my popcorn bucket at this. I was so mad. I'm like, and it did tank. It tanked bad. So, I love Jason, but that one was just just stunk up the joint. Something fierce.
I wouldn't even call him Wolfman. I'll call him a feral human with sharp teeth.
Yeah, that's another thing. They made a big deal. I had a couple of things thrown over the fence about practical effects. And the one thing they were showing is, they were, how they were having the hair come out of his arm and everything. Now, let me tell you, I just got to say to your audience here, the absolute best Wolfman transformation ever is in a series that you can still get on Netflix. It's called Hemlock Grove.
Yes.
Episode 3, season 1. I even can tell you exactly where to pick it up. I have rewound that day or backed it up and watched it. So don't tell me that a lower budget can't do a good transformation, because it can. Because Hemlock Grove wasn't like, it was a Netflix series at the very beginning of when people were, binging a Netflix series. That werewolf transformation was epic. Season 1, episode 3. Watch it. It's an education to movie people of how a werewolf should happen. Wolfman was a freaking joke, and those guys should hang their heads too. It's like practical special effects. It's like there wasn't any. The dude had. It was, remember, like you could get in the Halloween shops the hair that you sprayed on. That's what it looked like. It looked like the guys came out and sprayed that dude with some bad spray on hair. And I would have forgiven that if the story had been halfway decent. And again, the story had potential. There was potential there, and they just see, now I'm upset. Dude, I'm upset. I know.
Well, but I think Hemlock Grove, when I watch Hemlock Grove, I go, this reminds me of American Werewolf in London. the transformation.
Yes, which was still, in all these years later, a far better werewolf transformation than that crap that Blumhouse put together. But Hemlock Grove was epic. If your audience hasn't seen it, it was like the wolf blew out of the inside of the human being, like broke through, like the skin broke and the hair stuck out. And then the last bit is the wolf shakes himself like a dog shaking water and shakes the rest of the human off of him and then eats it. Because there's never a trace. The greatest, like, I think I timed it one time. It was like a 4-minute scene. I'm like, greatest 4 minutes of werewolf ever, outside of like some of the classic movies. But
Oh, it's astounding, because I think Hemlock Grove like went through the different types of werewolf and like captivity that's there, because you have someone that's able to drink the water and the paw print, of a werewolf and be able to get transformed into the wolf. There's like 6 or 7 different ways that can happen. And Wolfman just said, I got scratched, therefore a werewolf. Full moons, nothing.
No, and not, and the scratch, and that's all it. That's all it was. And the ending, like I said, the ending that they implied and what I got to look at would have at least not made me hate on it that bad. But I thought everything in there was predictable.
Yes.
And the people I went and saw the movie with, like, no, stop saying that. I can tell you exactly what's going to happen. Who's going to die? It was just uninspired for such a rich a folklore that's every bit as rich as vampire folklore is. The fact that they can't come up with something better. But as we were saying earlier, Robert Eggers' next film is a werewolf movie. So here I go, hope springs eternal. Thinking maybe he's going to do for werewolves what he did with Nosferatu. But
and then we have Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein movie come out too.
Yes, which is like, I wrote about that. It's like, talk about you could have put a human being together out of spare parts for how long it's taken him to make that movie.
Yeah.
I once one of the articles I did, I wrote how many what percentage of Del Toro movies does he actually make? And I figured it up mathematically. It was like 26% of the stuff he says he's doing, he actually does. So I'm really excited that he's doing Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I watched Cabinets of Curiosities on, what was that?
Yes.
Was that HBO? Was that Max?
I thought it was Netflix. I thought it was Netflix.
Or was it
wasn't
Netflix?
it?
Oh,
I
it
think
was
it was
Netflix.
Yeah.
Wasn't entirely in love with all of those, and I really hope Frankenstein's good, because man, that's another one that's near and dear to my heart. And let's not screw that one, please. Please,
Yeah.
let's not.
Yeah, I think I've talked to this other guest too. I think the way to do a universal shared universe is that we have to do back to horror. It could all be period pieces. I don't care. I'm okay with that, because yes, we had The Mummy. Yes, we had Hollow Man in the late 90s,
No.
and those were fine. Then we had the Dark Universe that's like, oh, I Frankenstein. That's the first one. Oh, no. Dracula and Toad. Yeah, that's the first one. No. And then backpedaling, and it's not. We don't need action. We don't need CGI fest of Tom Cruise running away from the Mummy.
I was gonna say, if you bring up Tom Cruise, I'm gonna. We could spend another 30 minutes me hating on that movie. Absolutely hating on that movie. I've never felt so passionately pissed at a movie as Werewolf was close, but the fact that let's not. That killed Dark Universe as well. It should. At least they recognized because you know what we were in for after that? We were going to get Angelina Jolie as Bride of Frankenstein.
Yep.
And weren't we going to get who were we going to get as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. I think Johnny Depp was going to be Jekyll and Hyde. And I'm like, can we just not? We don't need. We don't. Nobody wants to see any of that. And we don't. Yeah. Tom Cruise in that movie.
So Sue, what do you think it would take to get a universal shared universe going properly? What were your thoughts on that?
I thought they had the right. I thought they had nailed it when Blumhouse did Invisible Man. Mm-hmm. I'm like, this is the formula they need. Not particularly indie per se, but not big studio. They need not big name stars. And it needs to be, I mean, come on, what we love about the Universal Studios monsters originally was there was no special effects to speak of. It was atmosphere, it was good acting, it was good storytelling, it was good music and camera angles. And I thought when I saw Invisible Man, which I loved, by the way, that they've got it. They're going to maybe not do Jason Blum every time, but they're going to find other studios like his. They're going to find actors people may or may not have heard of, and I don't know what happened. I gotta believe that they're, with the park coming up here in May. I think the park opens. It's gonna you would assume bring a whole new generation of fans into that. Now, they've taken some liberties with some of it from what I've seen already, but kids are going to go in and go, well. And that would be something the parents could feel good about letting them watch too, because it's not hack and slash. They're actually good horror movies. So the originals. So I hope that that's what I think it would take. And I'm not entirely sure that they have that formula yet. Yeah. We'll see if, I mean, all those stories aren't they I mean, the original stories, not the Universal stuff, but the original stories are public domain, so pretty much anybody could make them. But I feel like they need to be true to what made the original so awesome.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think we do, like, for the supernatural creatures, old school lore is when you go back to the roots of the old school lore. like I said, I thought Invisible Man was great because we dealt with technology. What a poignant place to do it, because Invisible Man was always a science experiment gone wrong. He wasn't
Yep.
supernatural. He's just he drinks a potion and made him invisible.
Yep.
And it'd be interesting to see what they could do with vampires and werewolves and mummies, and you can even go even to a scientific route. You can have the contagion, you can have the blood disease be vampirism, and kind of do a scientific part of it, but still have classic atmosphere, as you said, is important to no end.
Yeah, and that and it, it's filmmakers. They they feel like, I think what you see is what brings people to theater is the over the top.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's CGI or, again, the blood and the violence, it's really hard, I think, to sell something that's more subtle. And again, not to keep loving on Nosferatu, but I did think that it harkened back to that.
Mm-hmm.
The way it was filmed, it was very low, like, violence, very low. It was atmospheric, and that's why I loved it. I'm like, this is an old time horror movie brought into, we're using modern technology, but it wasn't the CGI within an inch of its life. It was, I thought it was fabulous for that reason.
Oh yeah, for sure. I absolutely love it. I want these people that love the classic, they're making the classics for that reason, not just to make this shared universe that's just going to be garbage every time they attempt to do it.
Otherwise, just leave it alone. It's like, stop messing with it. Just leave it alone. Remaster the originals and re-release them. Do something like that. Stop screwing around with what works. It's like somebody trying to say, I'm gonna remake Gone with the Wind. It's like, just don't. Just leave it alone. It's fine the way it is. So let's hope. I have high hopes for Frankenstein. We'll see if Mr. Del Toro doesn't let me down. He had acquired the rights to make an adult version of the Haunted Mansion from Disney. It was going to be either it was definitely going to be more than PG. It was going to be like PG-13, more of an adult version, not a joke. He had gotten the rights from Disney. I had seen some things where they had let him go into the Haunted Mansion ride in California with the lights turned on and all this stuff. It was this big hoo-ha, and he was going to write a not for children Haunted Mansion movie, and then that ended up, on the cutting room floor. I guess he didn't have time, but let's hope he does. He says in an interview I read with him in Variety that he is a huge fan of the original black and white Frankenstein, and that he's loved it ever since he was a kid, and that he plans on paying homage to the original. So fingers crossed.
Oh yeah, that's all we can hope for at this point in time, is for people just to continue that world. So can't wait. All right, so let's get into some of these wrap-up questions. We're at about time here, so I have to ask, if you talk about Universal and stuff like that, what is your favorite horror movie overall then?
Okay, strictly horror, I'm gonna go with I love The Shining. And I know I'm probably hearing a collective because I mean, this is my side hustle. I love horror in general, but I absolutely love the movie The Shining. I love Jaws, though technically you could say that's not necessarily a horror movie, but
I think it is. It's a creature feature.
Yeah, I love Jaws, but yeah, the Shining never gets old for me. In fact, I just went this year, finally got tickets to the Shining Ball at the Overlook, what they at the Stanley Hotel in Colorado.
Yeah.
And went out for the weekend and stayed at the Stanley and did all the kitschy stuff there and went to the ball. So that, my life is complete now that I went there. But yeah, that's my I think that's my favorite.
That's awesome. I was going to go to the Bruce Campbell Arama that they had there a couple of years ago. It was like $2,000. Like, that is a price point that my wife goes, no.
Yeah. Well, no. Yeah. I'll be honest with you. I love the Stanley Hotel. I love how they capitalize on that. I mean, it is kind of cheesy, but it's awesome hotel, awesome place. The Shining Ball was in no way worth $200 a person.
Oh
So
wow.
I'll just a spoiler alert. If anybody's thinking of doing it, don't bother.
Yeah, I said I want to go there just to go there because that's the hotel that inspired.
Inspired.
Obviously, yeah,
Yep.
because the other is Timberland Lodge that was actually filmed at.
Yep.
But I
Yeah.
want to do
No.
both.
And this last year, 2024, was the 50th anniversary of the year that King stayed there, and was inspired. Stayed there, was snowed in, and was inspired by the hotel to write the book. So I thought they were going to blow it out for this. In fact, I'm like, maybe Stephen King will actually show up. I was, yeah, no, it was, yeah, it was not worth $400 for the two of us to do that party, but still a cool experience. Go out and just enjoy the hotel on any other day. Don't bother going to the ball in October.
Awesome. So Sue, if you could write about, or like, I usually ask what people want to be in, but what do you think IP or franchise should come back that we were due for like a good entry in the next thing? What would you want to see?
Oh, a remake, you think?
A remake or even a next sequel? Like, do you want an actual next, good Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street? Or kind of like, what do you want to see, like the next big project or franchise to come back?
I don't love the idea of remakes, but I'll tell you, I am a little bit excited about the Camp Crystal Lake series that's coming out. They're going to do like the origin story, I think, of Jason's mom.
Yeah,
is what I was reading. So I loved up until they became absolutely absurd. I was a huge fan of Friday the 13th, of the Halloween. The original Halloween movie is definitely in my top 10. But again, I kind of I cringe a little every time they go touch those, because I'm like, just leave it alone. So but I do love a good origin story. So I'm kind of excited about that. I didn't hate on the Psycho origin story that they did. I think that was Netflix too. That
Bates Motel, yeah.
Bates Motel, yeah. I kind of dug that. So if they're gonna mess with some of the classics, that would be the way to do it. Don't try to redo anything, but do a tangent type story like that. I'll tell you what we can stop doing immediately is any more Jurassic Park movies. If those really, I am so disappointed that they just can't let that go. But yeah, I like a good origin and a tangent. So yeah, the Camp Crystal Lake is something I'm looking forward to. I did love a lot of Anne Rice's books, and I do love the vampire series that's being done on AMC. The Interview with the Vampire.
Yeah.
I don't like the witches one at all, but I love the vampire one. She wrote a book called the Mummy, Ramses the Damned, and believe it or not, not Spielberg. It had been optioned to be made into a movie, and the director kept it 10 years and never made it, and so the rights reverted back. And unfortunately, it got sold to AMC along with her entire portfolio right before she passed away. But if you haven't read that book, not the sequel, because there is one, just the original book, it is a fantastic take on the Mummy. Without being the Mummy, the movie, but a very much brother cousin of the original that I'd love to see be made into a movie. I just think that it's been sucked up by AMC, and I don't know if AMC is going to do it justice. But that would be one I would definitely hope a big studio would get hold of and do a good job with that one.
Yeah. Do you have any high hopes for Mike Flanagan and the Exorcist franchise?
No. I like everybody, that's another one. In fact, was it last year, I think, or a year before, I interviewed the woman, and I can't think of her name, so I apologize, that played the demon and whose face, when you see on the certain posters, it's that
Yeah.
half white. And I was talking to her, and she was absolutely racking on those. But she's like, why can't they just leave it alone? You know, she's an older lady. She's like that. You can't capture that magic a second time. You just can't. I'm like, no, you can't. So no, I'm not. I do love Mike Flanagan. I love me some Mike Flanagan. He's done some amazing stuff, but not that one. No.
Yeah. I think that's going to be the first really big black mark against him, because I don't think he can do anything with it.
Because that the last one he just did, the House of Usher, absolutely freaking loved that. I watch it twice. So I mean, he's good, but yeah, let's not do that. The devil has been beaten to death. Let's just move on. Do something else.
Exactly. So any advice for people that want to get into the world of writing? You've been doing it for a while now.
And I just took a stab at writing a short story. And I'll tell you, there's nothing more humbling, because I review everything horror. So books, music, movies, gaming. And, I felt like I needed to try it myself, because I review other people's work. And it has been humbling. I have been rejected 11 times so far, and I'm going down a list that the editor of Blackgate gave me, a list of places to send it. And I have on occasion gotten some really good feedback that's been very positive, but it's just no. So I would say, if you have a story in you and you're interested in writing fiction, just believe what you've written. Like I'm like, I don't have any designs on writing anything else. If this never gets published, it will never see the light of day, and I'll be okay with that. But I'm not going to change it. I'm not going to gut it and rewrite it. It is what it is. So, definitely try it. The whole thing with Blackgate was just a whim. And this short story now, I'm, shopping it, and it is humbling. But I will say, if writing is just something that you always are working at it. I don't think, unless you're just a genius, like some of the authors, I do look at people, I'm like, I don't know how you do that. It's amazing. But most of the rest of us have to just keep at it and keep at it and keep at it. And, even I go back and read some of my archive things from years ago, and sometimes I'm like, hey, I really like that. It's still pretty good. It holds up. And then sometimes I'm like, oh man, what were you thinking? Why did you think that was funny? My attempt at being funny doesn't always land, and even with myself. But yeah, I'd say just do it and get feedback from friends to start out with. And then don't be afraid, as long as you're cool with getting rejected. Maybe you won't, maybe you'll strike gold right out of the gate, but just start sending it places and see where it falls. I am not a writer by trade. I have been in engineering my entire career. This is just something I do for fun, and not anything I went to school for or anything, just something I enjoy doing.
Yeah. And that's all you can hope for is your passion projects, stuff like that. Salem, my co-host and producer, he's a much better writer than I am. So we run everything together. We are writing short stories together for short films, working on a trilogy of independent horror movies that we're working on. Hopefully,
I'm excited I'm excited about those. I've been hanging on them, watching for them. So I hope Blackgate will get an exclusive when the time is right.
Yes, of course. Like I said, we're always open to everything. Just like I said, it's networking. I love meeting people like yourself at everything we do. So Sue, you ready for your random horror trivia question?
I'm so stressed by this, but yes, let's try it.
Wow, I literally picked up the first card that's there.
Okay.
What is the first entry in the Haunted Anthology TV series that flashed between the family's past and present paranormal experiences?
I'm sorry, what was the first
entry in the Haunting Anthology TV series?
In the Haunting?
Mike Flanagan's The Haunting series.
Oh, The Haunting of Hill House.
Yeah, that's the very first card.
Oh my god. I'm so glad that was an easy one. I was sitting here stressing the time. Sure, you've been writing for all these stuff for horror, and then you don't know the trivia questions. So yes, that was an excellent take, by the way, on on that. Talk about doing something different with a
Yes.
property that has been done over and over. I got to give him props for that. It was amazing.
Oh,
Amazing.
he made it about the people and the stories.
Yeah,
Hands
it was
down.
incredible. Well, and yeah, all of those were good. Just leave The Exorcist alone. Come on, Mike. Find something
Yeah.
else. There's so much out there.
Like, you know, the Dark Tower series.
Yeah. Yeah, Mr. King. Yeah, the certain things, yeah, let's not get into that, I guess.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Sue, very much for coming on. Make sure to check out blackgate.com and read all the Goth Chick news you could ever want.
Excellent.
I'm
Yeah,
excited.
thank you so much. Been a pleasure. Nice to meet all of your audience. And yeah, blackgate.com.
Yes, thank you. We'll see you next time. Don't get lost in the void. Good night.
Good night.